Okay, if we could get a roll call, please.
Mr. Sermonero? Mrs. Facette here. Mrs. Hartzell?
Here.
Mr. McCullough?
Here.
Mr. Potts?
Here.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Shaheen?
Here.
Mr. Radowski?
Here.
And Mr. Basil?
Here. Under announcements, we'll be having an executive session after this meeting to discuss personnel. Also, this meeting is being recorded. Is there any public comment on any of the agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Basil. I just want to thank everyone across the district who contributed to our United Way campaign this year. While we were actually slightly down from our goal, we have an annual meeting where we set an increase. We're striving for a 10% increase, but I think we've been hit a little bit by the economy. But we still managed to raise over $14,000 this year, which I think is a testimony to the Daniel Boone community and to help United Way and also in the Daniel Boone community. I just want to take a moment to especially thank everyone in the office, Mrs. Barr, Mrs. Price, and all the office staff across the district who helped to organize and manage our campaign. Unfortunately, I know you don't have the time to come to our opening day, but we had a real good time with a basket raffle, and everybody kind of had a little bit of a competition. And we actually, I think from that raffle that day, raised an additional $600, $600 plus. So we're real happy about that. We had to try to have a lot of fun with that process, and it's a good way to kick off the year to establish kind of a mentality of giving back a little bit. Mrs. Barr stepped into my office today, and we're ready to plan next year's already. So
all right.
We're real happy with what happened this year. Again, I know it's down a little bit, but you can never predict it in this economy. I think to come as close as we did to last year's goal is still something that's very applaudable. So that's kind of all I have under superintendent's report other than some miscellaneous. We had homecoming Friday, I believe. Kenny, that was the first time we used our new restroom facility for a football game?
For a football game,
yeah.
Besides the downpour, which there was no one there.
Yeah, that didn't really get tested that night, but we had a good crowd, had crowned our new homecoming king and queen. We had a nice Wall of Fame ceremony, which was done very well. Just a good weekend all around. There was a dance Saturday night, Dane. I didn't hear anything, so I'm assuming I didn't get a phone call at midnight. 1,000 kids. Excellent. So we're well into the fall campaign. All the activities are doing very well. Just very happy kind of way with the school year has opened. So I guess that would conclude my report under superintendent's report.
Any board questions? Okay, seeing none. Curriculum and instruction.
You have in your possession the annual NCLB report card that we are required to put together. That provides details about student achievement across the district and by building level as well. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Trainer for her annual review of this document.
Stay away from the PowerPoint.
That's right, 5 minutes. For most of you, you've seen these binders, which are standard in the format. Just a couple of highlights that I want to bring to your attention as you look through it. No Child Left Behind stipulates that a school district has to share this information with its board before and have the board accept it before October 31st. So you will see a line item on the October 24th board agenda that you just formally accept this. And then on the 25th, I'll have Brian post it as we have always done in the past on our website, which I have had a lot of feedback between applicants for positions and parents, especially moving into the district, who have shared with me that they have looked on the site. And so the district and the building report cards are used. True to form in Section 1, although we have to have our report cards completely put together by October 31st, the state, if we're lucky, will have theirs delivered to us by December. So, as in the past, I will give you that section once it's released for public view. If you just look briefly through Section 2, which is the district report card, the first part is just standard. We have the names of individuals, our mission statement. It goes on to describe the physical plant and the technology. And many of the tables, if you go over to page 4, part of No Child Left Behind is the requirement that you compare the previous school year with last school year. And so you'll see a lot of comparisons between 2009-10 and 2010-11, not only in the financial section, which starts on page 4, but if you look on page 5, where it talks about teacher qualifications, at the very bottom of the page, I have to give you the total number of professional staff last school year and then compare it to the highest poverty building, which in the Daniel Boone School District is Birdsboro Elementary, and the lowest poverty building, which is Amity Intermediate Center. So those are the buildings that are referenced at the bottom of page 5.
What were those buildings again?
The highest poverty building in the district is Birdsboro Elementary Center, and the lowest poverty is Amity Intermediate Center.
Okay, thank you.
Then as you go through, you'll see the beginnings on page 6 of where we started to hire part-time staff. So for the first time, you'll see a change in the professional staff statistics. I also break down for you, and as we have continued to allude to our young staff, you'll be able to see the breakdown on the number by certain increments, 1 to 9, 10 to 14 years. Support staff is under that. And then if you go over to page 7, you will see the low income percentages for each building. When you get to the high school, the law says that you don't report attendance, you report graduation. And so you'll see it says NA at the high school for attendance. All the attendance and graduation rates are 2 years behind because we don't get those statistics until midway through the following school year. So the 09-10 data talks about attendance and graduation. It's just part of the complexity of the No Child Left Behind. And then it goes on through, talks to you about the graduation requirements for the assessments. And then if you go all the way over to page 12, it's the summary of the PSSA scores from the 2010-11 school year. If I take you back a year and I was here, Birdsboro Elementary Center had a warning indicator for subgroups for special education in reading. They came off the warning list. They are now 100% highly qualified. And unfortunately, at the high school, the warning for the economically disadvantaged subgroup in performance means that 95% of the population needed to take the test. That population totaled 42 students. Mr. McElmoyle needed 39 to take the test. 38 took the test. Of the 42, 5 of those students were at an alternate placement, and it was those students that didn't take the test. It was not students enrolled in the Daniel Boone School District. And so it has now taught us to consider bringing those students back, all students in alternate placements, in order to maintain participation rate. So it was never something that we thought of before. You need 40 students to be reviewed as a subgroup. He had 42, and so it wasn't even our own kids who attend the high school that was the problem.
Of those that took the test, did they score? If we had a significant number, did they all score within standards for the AYP?
No, they also had a problem in reading. I'm sorry, in math.
Okay.
And I'll show you that when you get to the high school section.
Was that also part, like when I went to the Pennsylvania website, I think what they had is they had like we were within the confidence interval, I think, for the economically disadvantaged, but then like white, non-Hispanic was where we fell down at the high school level?
No, it was the economically disadvantaged this year. you'll see when you get back to the high school section.
Okay.
Anything that's in section 2 is just district scores. Once you start going through each building, then you'll see the building scores. So I'm just going to take you to section 4 because Amity Primary Center has very little in it because they don't even test. And then I'll answer your question, Mr. Basil, when you get to the high school section. When I do each building section, the first requirement is that you compare enrollment from one year to the next. When you look at Monocacy Elementary Center, they had no 5th graders 2 years ago. So that will be one anomaly when you get into Monocacy Elementary Center. Professional staff, attendance rate, support staff is the same for each of the buildings. And then what I have to do is break down total group and then by any subgroup that at least has 40 students. And so if you go to page 6, it's a good example of the breakdown for PSSA scores. You will see the percentage for math and for reading for all students in the particular school compared to the district score and the state score. When I come back in a couple of months, I'll give you the assessment detailed data for each of the tests, and then you'll be able to compare all of the students in a much more user-friendly format. This is the format that's given to us by PDE. So you'll be able to see the percentage advanced, proficient, basic, and below basic at the school level, the district level, and the state level. And that's done for each grade level in each building throughout the district. I'm going to go back to Mr. Basil's question. So if you go to section 8, and you go to the high school scores, in reading, you can see that I'm on page 6 of the high school scores. There were 41 students that were counted in the high school economically disadvantaged group in reading. That number, if you follow it across, should have been 67% proficient or working toward it, and they stayed level with the year before. Only approximately 31% scored proficient. So math, they scored the significant growth percentage they had to, but they need to identify who those students are in reading. It's a different population this year. This is part of that problem of comparing apples to oranges. You're looking at different students. But between the foresight and our information on who those students are, and we know who those students are because they had to file their applications by October 1st, not just the high school, but every building needs to take a look at those individuals if they have a subgroup of 40 or more to be able to monitor their progress throughout the school year. And so that is a targeted group that the high school has to look at this year. In addition to the requirement of the PSSA scores, I also added, just because we included in our report cards, it's not a requirement, I also included the AP scores. I included the post-secondary education survey, the college board scores, which we'll go through all of that when we do our assessment document. Another disadvantage of these comparisons is that if you go back to the 9-10 school year, in order for a child to be considered proficient, for a school or a building or a district to be proficient, they had to score at least 56% of the students had to score proficient in math. In this particular set of data, the 10-11 data, 67% had to score proficient. So the bar changes by 11 points, and yet they're comparing the percentage proficient from 2 years ago versus the percentage proficient from last year, and the bar wasn't equal. In reading, the same story happens. 2 years ago it was at 63%. Last year it was at 72%. And the original No Child Left Behind law states that every year it's to go up approximately 10%, so that in the original law, in 2014, if we were sitting here in the fall of 2014, 100% of all the students in every school in the United States would be scoring proficient. Now, about a week ago, President Obama put out the possibility of a state applying for a waiver. Pennsylvania has not applied for that waiver yet. Last week when I was in Harrisburg, they were considering applying for it.
Bless you.
What the waiver is initially intended to say, if Pennsylvania chooses to apply for it, is that it will freeze the 2011 targets, the 67% for math and the 72% for reading, for yet another year. So it won't go up by that 10%. Some states have already applied for the waiver. Pennsylvania was hesitant in my initial meetings last week because they're afraid that depending on the election, it may jump higher the following year and then it would be harder for us to meet the goals. And so there's a couple of things that they're weighing in before they put in their proposal. But there is a good possibility that Pennsylvania will join a number of other states in the nation, and they will put in an application that we should know by Christmas time whether or not it's accepted, that would have sort of an alternate formula that would be used for this coming school year's data, which would again change. It's not changing what has to happen in 2014, but it's procrastinating getting there, but it will be a larger jump then in 2013 to still make that target, unless No Child Left Behind, as we hear rumors, may go away before then. So at this point, you're just really accepting the statistics. We'll talk more about the positives and the growths and the strengths and some of the weaker areas when we do the assessment document. But you have the next 2 weeks. I invite you to just take a look at this. If you have any questions, you can call me or email me, and I can walk you through individually. For some of you, you've seen this for a number of years since we've started to have this requirement. If you see anything you'd like further explanation of, please call me, and I can certainly give you more detail.
Marie, the high school graduation rate of 91.67 and 92%. About 23 kids did not graduate with their class. Now, how many of those 23 finished during the summer or the following year and graduated?
No, well, that just means that between 9th grade and 12th grade, that many students dropped out.
Okay.
We don't put our statistics in until after summer school has closed. So we include the summer count when we do the statistics.
It's still 23 kids that dropped out.
Some of them could have gone, they could go for GEDs. We can't count those students because we have no proof that they finally took the test and ended up with the GED. A number of students do drop out and state that that's what they're going to do, and other students just leave the district.
Well, how many students actually dropped out or didn't graduate last year? How many high school seniors didn't graduate last year? Isn't that what you're asking, essentially?
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, 23 students is
This is
a
2 years ago,
significant
that
number.
stat is. 23 students left their class between 9th grade and 12th grade.
It doesn't matter whether it was last year or 2 years ago. 23 students from 9th grade to seniors decided to leave
Daniel.
formal education.
Correct.
Okay, we have no idea why. where they went, did they get a GED? Even though we can't count it, I mean, that's
We
a
could
big
go
number.
back, I mean, we do have
I mean,
a
it's a big
history,
number.
the high school has a history by student of a reason
Okay.
for, that I could get
I
for
mean,
you.
no, I don't want to reason. I mean, I'm saying that's a significant number, though. I mean,
Actually, as you code those, as I recall from my days as principal, you have to actually gather a reason from the student as they exit. There's a coded reason as to why
I'm just
they.
concerned that
Right.
there's 23 kids that didn't get a high school, didn't finish their high school education. I mean, if this was 20 years ago, that's one thing. But this is 21st century. Now we're looking at 23 kids that did not finish.
Last year's percentage, I've seen it, was higher than, there were less kids who left in 2010. 2011, I'm sorry. Graduating in the class 2011.
I mean, does anybody know how many kids didn't graduate from last year's senior high school class?
No, off the top of your head. I can find out for
I mean,
you.
because I think it was 2 years ago we had like 33 kids or something like that. 3 years ago, I can't
Of the
remember.
senior class
Of the
themselves,
senior
not
class
from ninth-
itself,
Then
senior
right.
class
A lot of
themselves.
them went through.
They went
summer
through
school.
summer school and we got them all caught up. But I'm just kind of curious now that this has come up. Do we know how many didn't graduate this year, and how many managed to get their degree or whatever they needed to through summer school? And
I can find the statistics out because Brian and I have been tracking them because we have to enter that data. I can bring it back to you.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Shaheen, do you want a brief summary on the Curriculum and Instruction Committee from last Thursday?
Yeah, the Curriculum Instruction Committee met last week. We reviewed our grading system as to whether or not the A, B, C, D, and actually the report gave us E, but actually it was an F, was significant or not. There did seem to be a slight skewing to the upper end of it, but the reasons were very simple. I mean, if you look at it, it included everything, gym and any other course that you got a grade were in there. We're attempting to potentially try to get the individual data points to look at and be able to remove some of the
Outliers.
classes like gym and outliers to see if it is. But it was something Mr. Schott was very. We haven't looked at it in years anyway, so it was something we were just looking at again to see if there was any issue. And it didn't. First blush, it didn't seem as though there was an issue.
You had a normal distribution of grades.
It looked to be normal, but again, without the data, it's hard to tell if it's normal without being able to look at it that way. I'm trying to remember what else we reviewed.
Special ed.
We looked at the AP scores, and we're had some questions, and we did see some jumps in AP scores where we got some more higher number of students getting the 4s and 5s. And there was some rewriting of programs, some new teachers teaching those programs, so that we definitely saw some benefits on those. And we had a 15 or 20-minute presentation on special ed, and we were able to ask some questions as far as what was going on there. There still was some concern with the lower number of aides that were in and that were assisting some of the teachers at the high school, but they were also doing some co-teaching, which helped. There was some points brought up about large sizes of study halls because of that process, and learning something, and maybe next year aggressively moving schedules around a little bit to allow electives that were not able to be taken to possibly be taken by shifting what periods they were being offered a little more aggressively.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Any questions or comments from the public? All right, moving on to buildings and grounds.
The Facilities Committee met last Tuesday. I unfortunately had a conflict and was unable to attend. I know they covered quite a few items, so I'm going to turn to Mr. Potts and have him give you some further details on that meeting.
Well, lengthy meeting. We did cover items with the high school as far as the bathroom completion, and as we stated, we'd like to thank Union Township for the scheduling extension that we did receive. Also with Birdsboro, they also gave us some help with the street with the torrential downpours we had with the washout. Also, the high school brought back its air conditioning after 4 long days. I'd like to thank the Birdsboro Fire Company for help with that, for priming that system. And we then reviewed as far as APC. Mr. Smith did have an issue with downspouts as far as some clogging issues with some cleanouts that were vandalized. Also, there was an issue with, found a couple days later, a downspout that all those are actually emptied into the, internally in the wall with some piping. He did find one that was cracked due to a freezing issue.
It's APC?
AIC, excuse me.
Okay.
And at that point, he is replacing those downspouts, converting those to external on the wall with the help of Amity Township with the backhoe to help dig up those cleanouts. With Birdsboro Elementary, he did have one of the 3 chillers give him some issues. He did bring that back online. With those aging chillers, we're looking at possibly replacing those. We're looking at a staggered timeline on that. We're looking at about $130K per chiller. So that's something.
How old are those chillers?
They're 25. They're 20 with
The building was in
25.
'87, so basically we're over just about 30 years. So
We're getting to
it's time.
time for that. So that's something that this board has to look at. Also, the Finance Committee brought up as far as billing, as far as the vehicles. I do believe hearing that we can track this with, there is driver's logs that can report all that information. Some of that information is also safety issues, as far as tires, make sure they're properly inflated, lights, and all that can be recorded. Those slips, though, would have to be turned in. So that's someone else's job. That would be a driver vehicle report or a DVR. In fact, that should have, the van truck should have one in with the inspection that was just done, the PA state inspection, that also has a federal DOT inspection done also. So the other issue that the high school we do have is a security problem. There was some trying to break in through one of the gates, and I guess
This is the stadium.
at the stadium. So we do have an issue of looking at ways of trying to do a little better job of protecting that, being security, more cameras, depends what the district can afford. We did bring up some dogs releasing inside the section. So that was, I guess we need to discuss that a little bit.
If I can,
How they're getting in?
They're climbing the
Over
fence.
the fence.
before we,
No, at 8-foot fence. They're climbing it.
8 foot
yeah,
fence,
it's
they're
not,
taking-
it's not working.
Wow.
Just one of the things that we talked about, even though I wasn't able to attend the meeting, Mr. Smith and I had met prior, knowing that I wasn't going to be able, and I asked him to bring this topic up. We've got a brand new $3 million plus facility yet in the parking. It's my recommendation, a very strong one, that we at least do a facilities audit, some kind of security audit up there to get the experts to tell us what we might be able to do. Because I know Mr. Miller's been working very hard. We were unable. We see people walking around. We can't ID them, and if you can't ID them, you can't arrest them. If you can't get license plates, you can't do really anything. So nothing, quote, real bad has happened yet. I think it's only a matter of time. And I think we need to get some experts in here and give us some ideas, and then we can decide how much we might want to budget for this, but it may become an expense that we have to incur to protect the property. I think it's serious enough for us to begin to take a look at this. So, I mean, I put that out there for your feedback and discussion, but sitting from where we're sitting, I mean, honestly, it's every Monday morning I'm getting a call from Kenny. Somebody's trying to break in.
How many instances since this has been done? 5, 6?
Already, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing that adds up to
No,
anything
but still,
monumental
it's gonna
yet.
happen. So you gotta review.
Exactly.
You might as well at least have somebody come in and give us some suggestions.
Nothing yet, but as soon as it shows up in one of the news articles in the paper or something, it's going to turn lights on somebody's head.
Are we leaving the lights on at the stadium to kind of
I'll have to defer. Dane,
Just the
Kenny?
walkway lights, just the access road lights, no lights on inside the stadium.
Dave, maybe you can describe, I mean, you in that email, what you say you're seeing on the cameras.
That
I
would
mean,
it would make the video even worse. The problem we have is the parking lot lights wash out the video picture that we get. So we can see the people walking across at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We can see the cars going across, but we can't even get a clear enough look because of the light washout. And if we had the stadium lights on, that would just make it even
I'm
worse.
just telling you, I think we should do an audit. Hire someone at least.
Do we know how much an audit would cost?
well, no, what I would do is I would research that and come back to you. And I mean, you could get as expensive as you want or as inexpensive as you want. I would bring back some suggestions to you, and Kenny and I can put our heads together. I think we can do it pretty quickly. We have enough people in the area that I think would be able to do something for us within 30 days.
I just wondering, is it possible to get better security cameras? I mean, some of the security cameras,
I
I don't know how old they are, but, there's different technologies.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things.
Some
Yeah.
are terrific in terms of what they show, and others are very grainy and so forth.
No, I just want to caution any suggestions that we may bring to you may come with a pretty hefty price tag. So we want to make sure that we have an honest discussion about that as well.
But it's
But Mr.
worthwhile.
Ross,
Absolutely.
If they wear a
Right.
mask, hood, if they have a hoodie on, like Mr. Sheehan said, you might not be able to see them anyway.
If they have a hoodie on, you're not
You're not going to
I
see
don't
them.
care.
So, I mean, you can have 20,000 cameras up there, but if they cover themselves.
But if we get a license plate, at least there's somebody to start
Yeah, but
questioning.
That's the other option. We had once discussed, and this is when it came to plowing, putting a gate at the end of both of the drives.
We talked about that.
That was already-
We talked about that.
What's done?
The problem is with securing that building, if we get a fire call or anything like that.
Somebody's gotta be up there to unlock the-
Firemen will have a key to get in through the security gate, but I'm telling
Couldn't
you,
they do a breakaway gate?
yeah, but
Well,
they have bolt cutters out there, they have chain cutters,
Yeah.
they will cut the
They'll get
chain
through.
on the fence.
And who's going to be
they
the
will
last
come
person
in.
to leave tonight?
Or they
after
will
band
go up
practice?
over the grass and come in.
After
Well, I don't think we can plan for every contingency. I think we need to let the experts advise us as to what they think is the. I mean, there are experts out there that know more about that. I'm not a security expert. I just confess that, but I know I'm an expert in knowing that we've had 5 or 6 attempts to break into the stadium, and that's just not sitting well with me to think of all the money that we spent. And it's a beautiful facility, and I would hate to see anything happen to it.
Right. No, it's the kind of things we've had done before.
I mean, we not that we only have a history. Schools in general are targets. They have histories of people trying to do foolish things, and I think if we sit around and wait for it,
And not just, I was
it's
talking
going to happen.
to somebody from Union Township over the weekend. They built the bathroom facilities down there by the trail, and redid all that. They've been completely ruined multiple times. I mean,
I was just in there.
they're talking about they've multiple times broken the toilets, broken the urinals, broken the change,
Same thing in
jumped on
Rustic
the
Park.
changing table, right? And Rustic's the same.
Same thing.
And they're talking about just locking them.
It's not just Daniel
Spend all
Boone,
this money to
No,
build,
it's not, but what
facilities for people.
but we can only deal with Daniel Boone.
Well, I'm just saying, I think it's
agree.
important to be smart to try to
I
prevent
agree.
it.
Be
because-
proactive.
What happened the last time is this past, 2 weekends ago? I think it was on a Sunday evening. They drove the car down and they tied a chain onto the gate. And actually what they were trying to do is get the car inside of the facility to turf the field. I guarantee you that's what they were trying to do.
Can we get, well, let's do this. Let's get the,
Can we give Dr. Otto instructions?
well,
All I need is
I
to
think
go
that's
ahead
something
with
we
the
need to look
audit,
at.
and we'll get the audit, and we'll get the suggestions.
get a couple of
That's all I
Dobermans in
need.
there and
I
be done
think
with
these
it.
are
At least to start
like
barking and
dogs.
have the
I like
neighbors
this.
alerted.
Well,
all the
let's
time.
not jump to any one.
But let's do this. Let's get a security expert out here. I think you have consensus from the board to have somebody come out and give us some prices on and options, and we'll go from
Check
there.
with the dog thing is allowed.
We can just step it up.
No, the cats we're going to get are a little bigger than hers.
Solicitor about the dogs.
We will. No, we'll check it all out. I just
anything else?
can't express.
Pardon?
I didn't get there yet.
All right, do you have anything else in facilities?
Yeah, I'm sure he does. I just wanted to cut in there on that piece.
They'll be here Thursday morning.
Order.
Go ahead.
I yield to the floor.
No, let's keep moving this along.
One other thing with security, I brought this up, and we had some mixed consensus on this, that I feel as the board should have some kind of ID when they're in different facilities. And I guess I have that open for discussion, what people think of that. I mean, obviously, we're in a building, or if I'm in a building meeting Kenny, or Mr. Smith, sometimes they don't know me from Adam, and if I'm walking the hall after school,
We'd be very surprised they know who you are.
you think so?
You sign in at the office though?
No.
You have to sign in at the
You're
office.
supposed to, I mean, the procedure is if you're
Correct,
going into
yeah.
a building, regardless of whether you're a board member, you should sign in and let the administration know
This
you're
might
there.
be, say, after school, it might be 5 o'clock. It could be, who are we to know how we're identified in general?
It's probably not a bad idea. I mean, I can think about, we had some construction going on, I've, gone on the site to check out and so forth, and the people are wondering who you are and why you're there and that kind of thing, and you got to explain each time why you're there, and it's,
Well,
and
you have your
already
ID
tells
tag,
you
you're
there's
still going to have to explain who you are, and to be honest, I don't go into the buildings other
Yeah.
on.
I've seen it done both ways in districts I've been in, so it's really the board's
I think
discretion.
at the facilities committee, the consensus was if a board member wanted whatever the standard ID is that we're issuing out to the teachers and everything else, they could have one made. And if you don't want one,
I know we checked, and
You don't need to have
Mr.
one.
Smith checked Exeter.
Exeter has them. Yeah, there's a couple school districts that one who just have the regular.
That just
RAPs
opened for,
like that.
I threw out there, so.
Good idea.
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't know, I can check with Mr. Subers, I don't know that it's a mandate for board members, being that you're, quote, not employees of the district, so I can check the legal end.
I think
for
that
you.
was the only issue. Like, I don't want to be forced to wear a badge to attend every sort of school function if I don't.
No.
Are you aware of any
Unless you're
mandates
there
in
in
safe
an official
schools that says
capacity.
board
Even
members
if
have
I
to
am.
have? Are you, and
They'll be
with
there.
your?
I'd probably forget it anyways. So
Exactly.
They would just get a visitor badge if they came in and signed in
Right.
like anybody else. There's no reason to identify yourself as a...
Because our policy for these does not protect, doesn't say board members in it. So
I know, my
you getting
concern
that.
would be that people stop following the protocol that should be followed in the sense of notifying whatever administrator. Like if I was going to look at Monocacy when it was
Right.
under construction, I would call either Kenny or Ray and say,
Right.
hey, can I come by?
Right.
And if you just have a badge, you think, oh, you can go anytime and anything.
That's true.
And that is a concern to me because we don't have any authority beyond being here as a consensus. An individual board member has no jurisdiction
Correct.
by themselves, and that would be my only concern with it.
It's
You know,
really,
if it's
again-
a school it's good in the sense that if you're walking the halls in an area that you shouldn't be, people could look at you and say, oh, they have an ID, they're part of the district. But if it's so that you can go in and look at things without maybe following the proper procedure, that would be my concern.
But if you are
Because then you might also be put in the position that, well, can you make a decision here? And you don't have the authority to make that decision.
Plus, if you're
Because I remember when the stadium was under construction, something was left open. And here, what was his name? He was still around, but he had gone up off the site, for a minute. So Trainer Bob was there. I'm like, hey, that one, the press box. They were up in the press box. So I, as an individual board member, did not want to handle it because that's not my job.
Right,
That's why we
right.
have people. So I referred it to Trainer Bob, as I call him, and then he called the AD, and he's like, oh, the clerk, whoever the GC was on, he was still there, and he was coming
Oh, that was
back.
Chris, you were thinking of Chris, I think.
Yeah, Chris.
Brennan. Chris
Yeah,
Brennan.
and usually he used to lock everything up
Right.
before he left for the end of the night. But there were kids going up there. But my concern
Yeah, I remember
would
that
be
incident, yeah.
the board members would take on things that maybe isn't in our realm.
Well, if we can do some cursory research and see what others. I'll call Exeter and find out why they did it and see what their rationale was.
I know BCIU, you had to have it.
We do have a placard.
But I think
And that was
the
a safety
BCIU is really like a social service. They have so many people in and out.
and
I
that-
can understand
so
their
when you
need
came
for
in,
that.
you had to have your ID on so
Right.
that they knew that you were supposed to be there.
They know us, and
going
we
into
as
the-
superintendent's report out there, we're supposed to sign in.
Right.
So,
But we still had to sign in
Right.
with the ID.
I think our concern was also speaking to.
Well, if we're going outside,
the public, right?
not say general public, say if we're going out to solicit as far as donations for within
Why would the board be
school.
soliciting donations?
Yeah, why would
Well,
we
if-
be doing that?
as far as finishing up the stadium, and we did something, say, with picnic tables, and you had a certain client that you knew, and you asked him to participate in donating said articles. At that point, then things got released over to Mrs. Barr and Dr. Otto. But if you're going on a cold call, who is he to know who I am versus...
But would not the
Public.
entire board have to agree to a board member representing the district looking for donations, instead of going out on your own to look for donations.
So if you had a conversation, just a, say off the fly conversation, you should go to the board as a whole then? For permission to ask?
Or at least to the
At
superintendent.
least to the superintendent. I mean, if you're going to go and ask somebody to donate, now let's use your picnic table as an example, and if you're going to represent the district and the board, then you should have it. Somebody should know that you're doing it. Dr.
Well,
Otto, at the least.
Mr. Smith, or Mr. Smith.
Or Dr. Otto should
Or
represent.
No,
it.
Dr. Otto.
Dr. Otto
I'm not
should
sure it's
represent
our job as a school board member to represent the school district and or the board looking or looking for donations or requesting donations of outside individuals. If we hear about something that they're willing to do or we have an idea, we brought those things up in the past and say, hey, look, I know somebody that.
Well, there were some ties to the
I guess
completion
we could take it out. I mean, that's probably one specific example is maybe not be a good one. I think what we also talked about at facilities was, let's say you're a committee chairman, and we always divvy up responsibilities amongst board members because sometimes there's not enough administrative personnel to
The
help.
board knows about it, though.
Yeah, but if I were to make a couple calls, having something pertaining to revenue enhancement, about advertising or something else, just to get some numbers from people, so we have some discussion, or there's a consultant that comes in and I need to talk to that consultant. Hey, look, why don't you come into the committee and talk to us? But while I'm having that initial conversation, would it be helpful if I had a badge or something that identified me as a school board member, as opposed to?
Have you ever had a problem though when you?
No, I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm just thinking like with finance. And probably
any
happens with
committee,
finance a lot because you invite bond people in or you invited, advisors, and I don't think there's ever been a problem where.
Well, you know what, let me ask Exeter. I'll talk to the superintendent over there and find out what their rationale is, how their board members are making use of it, and then we can decide whether we want to move forward with this or
And
not.
if we decide to do it, leave it up to the individual board.
Well, that's
members
what. At the end of the day, that's what we came up with. If a board member wants a badge, okay.
I'll do
The
some
concern
further.
is how the badge
I'll do
is
some
used.
I'll do some further research with
That's
Exeter.
my concern.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Absolutely.
I'm going to put that.
We don't want, and I think that came up during discussion too. We want people walking around with a badge on them like the sheriff in town, and hey, I'm a board member, blah blah blah. I mean, that's not where we want to go
There's
with
no
this.
authority beyond this boardroom.
Exactly.
Again, my point is, and I'll restate this: don't believe that the people in the buildings don't know who you are. They do.
They do.
Okay. Anything else from facilities? Okay. Any questions from board members on facility items? Seeing none, any questions from members of the public on facilities? All right.
Thank you. We will pursue this business with the stadium. We're really going to be very aggressive with that.
All right. Under finance.
You have in items A through E, number of routine approvals. If there are any questions, I'll take them, and we'll also have a report from the Finance Committee, which met prior.
I looked, and maybe I didn't see it maybe they didn't, but on the exonerations, are they township exonerations or are they individual exonerations? Because I didn't see any names or.
Yeah, I didn't see any names either. I might have missed it too.
I'll have to defer to Mrs. Penza.
Number 3, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4. But I know definitely 3. Attachment 3.
Do you have the attachment?
She has names on the front.
Okay, but then you flipped to then maybe it was 4.
There's names.
Okay, read it online.
There's names on all of them.
Okay, there wasn't on the online stuff. I couldn't see
I
it.
think it's on the left-hand side.
Is it on the electronic thing that it didn't come through right?
Okay, because I didn't see it. You didn't see
I didn't see it on the web.
Okay. The ones online you can't read them. It just says,
Did you take it from the board documents, or did you
I-
take it from the posting?
In Blaisdell, you can see it.
I couldn't see
Oh,
it
it's in the
You couldn't see
letter.
them either.
It's on the letter. The names are on the
Mr.
letter.
Campbell, would you research that,
it
please?
doesn't matter. I'll go look at it again. I mean, if it's there, I think
Yeah,
the word for
they're
it.
there.
Yeah, it's there.
They're on both of them.
I couldn't find it.
I'm not gonna- 3 of us could.
I can certainly, if you can't, let me know and I'll scan them to you.
Did you use Blaze for that to get it?
Yes.
He couldn't find, Andrew couldn't find it.
That's weird.
I didn't spend a whole lot of time. Once I kind of glanced at it, I was like,
happened before. There's
I
been
looked
some
at 2 or 3,
spotty.
couldn't see it, went on and.
Sometimes the PDFs, when you convert them to a PDF, it drops
I don't
things
know.
out. I don't know.
It's technology.
I know the one,
sometimes.
yeah, and then if you email it to yourself and then open it, it opens fine.
Yeah.
It's.
Computer.
I didn't worry about it too much, but okay. We had a finance committee meeting right before this. We had a gentleman by the name of Mike Homcha come to the meeting. He is a senior consultant with Expense Reduction Analysts, which is a company that consulting company that meets with businesses and school districts and provides them with advice on how to reduce their costs in telecommunications, IT, banking, janitorial services, food services, payroll, all kinds of different things. And they get paid on a contingency basis, so they get half of the savings that they generate for their clients. He came in, made a presentation. I provided some information that he gave to us to the finance committee members. I will forward that to the rest of the board, so you get some more information about the company itself. We essentially asked them a bunch of different questions about how they were able to realize these savings for their different clients. Some of the things that they do, they've got experts in every different field, and they've got 750 employees across the globe. And all they do is they have, pick a couple of engineers, and all they do is work on waste management issues. And so if you've got a waste management contract, they'll go out and renegotiate the waste management contract, or do a series of RFPs to find out if you're actually getting a competitive price. And if you are, they'll go to the vendor that you're working with and work with them to try to get you a better price than you currently have. So we're sort of in the preliminary stages of talking to this. I didn't see any harm in bringing someone in who may be able to take a look at some of the things that we do here, and if they can find a less expensive way for us to do it that improves our bottom line and doesn't skip out on quality of the service that we receive, then we ought to let them go ahead and take a crack at it. But he's going to go back, and we asked him to go back to the school districts that he was working with, and they signed non-disclosure agreements with their school districts and other entities that they work with. We asked if he could talk to them and see if their superintendent could call ours, so we could sort of share information and get some more questions answered in terms of what kinds of things are they doing for the other school districts specifically, and were there any kind of issues that they had to overcome when working with the school districts that we may run into here with our relationships with BCIU and some other organizations that perhaps is a better way to get it done, and we don't have to rethink it. He's going to look into that, and he's going to provide us with some copies of their engagement letters, the non-disclosure agreements, and things of that nature. And then I'll share all this with the board as we receive it. But it's a preliminary conversation as we move forward into the budget year.
Do we have certain expenditure categories that we think that we're overspending on that we should be saving?
I don't think it's a question of over-expenditure. I think it's more one of if we're spending, $50,000 a year. We were using telecommunications as an example during the meeting, and that's what we spend. And they have a way to come in and get that done for us for $25,000 a year, then that's something we ought to consider.
He said that he's dealing with 4 other school districts, one in particular in Montgomery County, that he's saving them about $125,000 a year approximately. He won't tell us who they are, but one of the things he did say is that because they signed a confidentiality agreement, that we'd obviously would want Dr. Otto at least to be able to contact them and discuss.
That's what he shared with us.
Discuss it. He talked about
IT
potentially, but didn't get into a lot of details on that. And basically, a little bit like somebody's paid for a T1 using a T1 connection when they don't need a T1, and they're able to get them out of that agreement into another agreement. Talked about the food services, janitorial services, some of the stuff we've already been down. But because we've already had the telecommunications, Kenny was here, Mr. Smith, we've already been down the road on telecommunications once, so we're told that we've got everything out of it, we can get out. We sort of threw that one up as a potential that we, if we decide to enter an agreement, that would be, he wants to make his bones, that's probably where he's going to have to strike first, because we've already been told that we're doing about as best as we can telecommunication-wise.
But things like waste management, how many, he and Kenny started getting some detail, like, well, how many times does waste management come and pick up at a building? Are they picking up more times than they're supposed to? Do they have the right size dumpsters? Can you put in a bigger dumpster and stop by less times a week and therefore reduce your costs as opposed to smaller dumpsters that require more visits? In terms of recycling, if we were already doing recycling and they're walking away with a cardboard, but we're not getting any money for it, and they're turning around and making profit on the cardboard in terms of recycling, is that something that they can go out and negotiate and get us a percentage of those revenues in terms of the recycling? all sorts of different examples.
Understanding
So-
that we're also tied into the IU on a lot of things that we don't necessarily have the ability to pull out of, because then that economy of scale that the bid was built on disappears too. So,
But interestingly enough, Joanne, at the IU, he's been trying to get an appointment to meet with the IU so that their company can go in and help them with their bidding. It's just the same sort of services he's providing to individual school districts and companies. But the IU has been very resistive to allow them to come in and even make a presentation. It would seem to me it's in our best interest, as well as the other school districts that are part of the IU, to allow a company like this to come in and offer their services. If it doesn't cost the district or the IU any money and they realize it's savings for them and us in turn, I would think that that's something that all the districts would want to at least explore. I mean, we don't have to do anything, and the IU doesn't have to do anything ultimately at the end, but it doesn't hurt to take a look into it. So we told him we'd bring that up with you, and maybe you can talk to the IU about this guy's company and giving them a crack at coming in. And I'll email all this stuff. He sent me some PDFs ahead of time for the Finance Committee meeting. I shared that with the Finance Committee. I will share that with the rest of the board, and we'll scan what he gave us here today and
it's
send
like
that
anything
around.
else. I mean, there's no harm if he comes in and looks at it and says there's nothing for us to be able to do, then he leaves.
One of the other things we talked about was activity fees. We had asked how much we'd managed to collect for the fall season. The number was $69,025 through the end of September. I asked for a transition house update. How much money did we put into this house versus the lease that we have on it? We invested $4,900 to make improvements to that facility, and we've got a lease that's going to yield $12,000 a year. So it seems like that was a good idea, a good use of our resources while that asset sits with us. We talked about the payroll issue that we had before and how we were going to handle payroll internally. The recommendation was to implement the plan that we currently have in place, which is having the previous HR payroll assistant who's now doing payroll, and then bring in somebody who's going to do the payroll assistant HR position.
We would advertise for that.
We would advertise for that. Ms. Penza and Julie had looked into AD Computer, Paychex, and ADP to see if they would do our payroll for us. AD Computer and Paychex basically said they couldn't do what it was that we were asking of them because our payroll person was also an HR person, and we need to have that person here anyways to be entering a lot of the information that AD Computer and Paychex in turn would use to create the paychecks and send them out. ADP did not return the phone calls that were made to it. So did I represent everything accurately?
Yes.
If I may, I just want to put out a compliment for the business department and what Mrs. Penza and Mrs. Berkeley did, and secondarily to the employees who have stepped up in our time of need and have really done a good job. We didn't miss a beat with payroll. That didn't come very easily. You don't see what's going on behind the scenes, but that's a monster job, and they were able to do it, and I just want to thank them publicly.
And then just as a footnote to that, internally, they're working on a plan, a redundancy plan in case an issue would come up and somebody disappears from the district or something else that we're not going to skip a payroll or have a problem with payroll. That there's going to be internal controls in place to take care of that. We also had a discussion about how do we facilitate a culture here where we're coding things at the department level appropriately in terms of our invoices and work orders. Ms. Penza also put out a 12-month budget calendar back in August that was attached to, I guess, a goldenrod that Dr. Otto had put out.
I don't remember.
I missed it, and Danielle forwarded it to me again today. I will forward it to the entire board so everybody has that fresh in their minds. I think the goal is that we're going to try to get a first crack at the budget as a committee in November so we can provide some feedback to the administration so they in turn can go back and rework some things and then have it come back out in December for the committee and the board to consider as well. So we're not going to get our first look at it in December. We'll get a crack at it about a month earlier.
Now, are we as a finance committee back to the
Yes.
committee of the whole then?
Yes. I think it's just easier stay
Yeah,
with
then
for the
we
rest of the
can
year.
budget our time and put it in
Yep.
our calendars.
Yep. And that's pretty much what I had here for finance. Does anybody else remember anything else from the meeting that I might have missed? Okay. Any questions from the board
No,
No.
but I have a question to bring up then.
about finance?
I think it is.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Oh, wait. I got a question. Exactly how is the free and reduced lunch program, like how do the people sign up for that? Must they prove it, or there's just a form? Can somebody explain to me exactly?
There's an
what-
application process.
Okay.
That application is turned in, and one of our staff members actually enters that into a program, and then it tells us whether they're free, reduced, or denied.
But there's no proof that, I mean, you don't need...
There's no proof at the onset. However, we have to do something that's called verification one time a year.
Okay.
And our system actually, we don't just pick it, it kind of randomly does it and selects those people. Those folks must prove it at that point.
With like an
Okay, so in
IRS
other words-
form or something? Or?
It says, I don't have
So
off the
it's-
top of my head, it could be pay stubs, it could be,
So it's like an IRS audit. You could get audited or not.
you could or not. That is
Okay.
correct.
So, I mean, again, I'm just asking the question. So basically, almost anybody could apply. Let's say 500 people apply, 50 people might have to prove it.
True.
Okay.
And if we as an administration think that something is fishy, we are always allowed to ask for proof, but we don't
Do you,
normally.
Okay, do you do that?
Not unless something's brought to our attention, no.
Okay.
I can tell you in some cases with the activity fee, I had a couple conversations with people, and they have a right in our policy to an appeal if they believe that the limit that we set isn't correct from the government.
Again, I wasn't picking on any one particular
No, and I'm not,
area, but I'm
just in
asking
general.
again, overall how it worked. That's all. I was just curious.
Yeah, so you could be selected or you may not be selected to have that
Okay.
review done.
Are you aware of a problem or something that we need to be looking into? No?
You can share that privately.
How is that with the activity fee and the free reduced lunch? Is that if they're on either of those, do they get the fee waived, or is it if they're on free lunch, it's waived? If it's reduced, it's a
reduced.
reduced fee? And
Yep.
is that like a set reduced, or is that like
It's
a
the
scale?
percentage, we did a percentage of the lunch reduced amount, and then that percentage we applied to whatever the student activity fee was and took that percentage.
The only complaints that I got were from a few families because the federal government changed the limit and they weren't aware of it, and then they called me and they're allowed to have an appeal to me. I said, and then I went up to the person in our office who does that, double checked our figures. I called them back and I said, based on what you've shown us with the numbers you've reported, I can't change with and literally I have to tell them to call the United States Department of Agriculture. That's their final appeal.
I have a question. If they lose the appeal, if they lose it, do they owe the money back?
If they can't prove it. Yeah, if they get audited.
Say they get audited and they owe it. They don't qualify for a free or reduced. Can you go back and bill them?
I don't see why you couldn't.
We probably
Again,
would.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm just saying,
If that situation ever arose, we would.
I mean, if somebody purposely went in and put fraudulent figures in to qualify for lunch, and it's a USDA, then it's a...
again.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you
Right.
the folks that have been verified since I've been here, that has not been the issue. They've all,
That actually, yeah, okay.
they have truly been,
So no one
at
you know
what
ever
they've-
popped up
They
and
never had
went,
an
oh,
issue.
the other
not
way.
in the 3
But
years
again, how
that
many
I've
people
been
pop
here.
up a year? Not
I'm telling, if off the top of my head, she might have done 9 or 10 verifications this year, and that's the amount that it tells us we have to do. So it's not a whole
And how
lot.
many roughly families are in it?
A lot, actually.
Okay, well okay. You answered my question, thank you.
Human nature is to take advantage of the system.
Well, and I would say, it's not just here, it's,
Again,
they're taking advantage of all kinds of
be
different
cautious.
systems, yeah.
Of course. Okay, thank you. You answered my
The budget timeline was in the goldenrod on 8/26.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
Very good, Margaret.
Thank you. I'll still pass it around
Good
so
update.
everybody's got it.
Good update.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board members on finance?
Public.
Any questions or comments from the public on finance?
I am Monica Hamlin, 508 Monroe Street in Birdsboro. And I had a couple questions. You answered one of them already about the fall activities fee, how much we collected for that. But I also wanted to find out how much we collected for the club fees.
It's all in one.
That's
all
broken
in
down.
one.
I can give you that figure separately. It is broken down somewhere.
Okay. Because There's some questions that came from other people in the community toward me, and they asked that I ask these things. So they want to find out how much does each activity cost? Do we actually have a breakdown of what activities cost?
Each activity has a different cost based upon the advisor, the stipend. It's different.
We don't. I think we talked about this in finance. We don't really have a pure way of computing all the overhead costs, but the major 95% of the cost is probably embedded in the stipend for the advisor. So we can get very close to how much each club costs. I know that's not a perfect answer, but that's an honest answer in terms of. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think the two major costs in any activity, like if it's a sport, then you're talking about the cost for the coach. If there's a salary or whatever for the coaching position, there's going to be a cost for transportation, and then I think within the budget, the overall activity budget for sports, you've got supplies, basketballs, footballs, jerseys, whatever else is required there. In terms of the clubs, it's the easiest thing to identify are the stipends for the club advisors, and as we found as part of the activity fee committee, sometimes there may be transportation involved with a particular club. There may not be. There may be some other costs, whether it's yearbook or newspaper or what was the science, the Odyssey, and some of those other things. There's entry fees, and so there's other costs. And in the past, it's my understanding these clubs would, they had fees that they were charging students to be a part of the club, whether it's the foreign language club, or the Spanish club charge. I forget what it was. Mark, it was like $5 or $10 to dues, and then. I'm not sure what that covered. The school district, as part of her budget, was funding the major costs of this thing, which were the stipends or transportation or anything else that may have been associated.
Activities that they would go and do
a field trip,
lunching or a field trip. But I think to answer her question, and we could pull a report saying that the Spanish club teacher's stipend is X, and the German club teacher is this, and we pay the head football coach this as a stipend. We could pull those. But to say that, and if you're headed down the path that, my son is in the chess club with 8 other kids and their fee far exceeds the stipend for the chess club, then where's that extra money going? It's going into a central pool, and it's not being divvied out to the individual activities.
That's why the club is all one inclusive fee. You could be in one club or 5 clubs, and it's still you're only paying them the same.
Well, we're looking at, I just took random 3 families, and I know that more families on the cross-country team, basketball, I've talked to people from football teams, and, they were concerned about how the club fees, how the activity fee, club fee, and club dues are all being accounted for, whether the club dues actually goes back toward the school.
No, we don't. We don't handle that.
They stay outside our budget. They're within the individual clubs on their own.
Okay, because one child so
don't
far,
they put them
one
in
family,
the activity account at the high school?
it's just October, and they've already spent $344, and it's just October for one child. So you're going to hit that 500 mark very quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, the $500 threshold is. So what happens is
But that's not the cheapest.
They come possible.
I would love to know which. I've had 3 children go through, and even with the current structure,
Can you be in a band and a sport?
I don't think I would ever have that with one child.
Well, they're going to hit this by October when they pay their winter fees.
Oh, yeah, when they pay the $75 for winter fee.
Right, well, you're going to hit $344 right away, and then it's off at 5. Are we going to have enough money with these activities and club fees to make us through the whole?
Well, hold on. I think what we're doing is there's a commingling. Okay, hold on. There's a commingling of funds here. So what you're thinking of is there were dues and fees that clubs would charge. And those fees went into the student activity account.
Correct. Which we have no control over.
The school district doesn't have control of those. And those funds are used for whatever, luncheons or field trips or whatever it is the club is. Club activities, okay? The stipends and those sort of things that the school district had been paying for, okay, was a substantial portion of our budget, $100,000 in stipends a year, something like that, okay? So what we had done when we looked at instituting an activity fee was to say, okay, well, look, how do we help cover some of these costs? And so the way we can do that is we put in a flat rate for one sport with a lower rate for a second sport.
Third sport.
And then a third sport is free with a family cap of $500 just on the activity fees. This does not include dues or anything else. So it's just the fees themselves. And then you have clubs, which was a $50 flat rate for as many clubs as you wanted to join. Okay?
It was never intended to 100% fund.
It's never going to fund
Correct.
all the costs of a sport or all the costs of a activity. It just won't do it.
It was right. And then in addition to that, there's other things going on. For example, for the middle school athletics program, we eliminated all the assistant coaches and so forth and so on.
They're all volunteers.
Many of those sport activities are doing fundraisers to pay for some of these other things that are now not part of the budget and so forth. So to the parents, it all looks like fees being charged or things. So, but there's a whole lot of things that are happening, but it's not all activity fees that are affecting those students.
Well, they're just talking about out-of-pocket expenses.
Totally.
And that may be.
And this is what
That's
I'm
probably an
talking about,
accurate
like,
number.
They have the drama club, the DBYEA club.
That's one club. That's one fee, $50.
That's only one
No,
fee.
they pay a due on top of that.
No,
But that's out of our control.
That goes to the club,
So that's
not to
out
the
of your
school.
control. Okay.
Right, that part.
Parents were thinking that money went back into
No.
the-
No, that money,
That
let me,
becomes an issue where they're putting out all this money.
No, that goes back.
there's a proprietary account for students. It's called the Student Activity Account. It's for student activities and run by, and the officers of those clubs have a right to weigh in on how that money's, the district's not allowed to put their hand into that account. That's all student money, and whatever they choose to do with it as a club is done by whatever their charter says or whatever their club organization says. That's a separate account from the district's accounts where we take in the activity fees that we're talking about. So when you come up with a number, $344, mathematically that can't happen with what we charge because we're either charging, it's all 0 or 5s.
Right.
So they're throwing in some expense there.
With a cap
So
at
they were throwing
500.
in the dues.
Right, so
They were
that,
paying for the
we-
dues, and what their thought was is that due would go back into the general fund.
no, that's,
Okay, marching band charges the dues. I paid for the activity fee for band, and I paid the dues to the marching band. The marching band dues does not go to the school. It goes to the marching band.
It's
There's
the
a dues.
operating.
That dues has been in existence for years.
Right.
That is separate than the activity fee now.
and then the marching band dictates how that money's spent, not the district
Whatever the dues
Well, the
is,
advisor.
they-
Well, the
they
advisor.
went with it.
and the students.
But the
And
club
those-
itself gets to keep that money.
Correct.
Yeah, so if a club, let's say, was taking field trips to Daniel Boone Homestead, and their dues were, $5 a student or whatever it was for years, and then suddenly decide they want to take field trips to Los Angeles, the school district is going to cover that. So if they either raise their fees, their dues to, $100 a student to cover the trip to Los Angeles, as
Or they
opposed to the
fundraise.
Daniel Boone Homestead.
Or they
I mean, it's just- or they fundraise or something else. I mean, those are their two options. But I think the confusion is the activity fee itself was designed to help the school district cover the costs of the stipends or transportation or some of those other costs that the school district was directly funding for activities. And it was a way not to cover 100% of that cost, but to take a percentage of it and help keep those activities around.
Okay.
Did we?
Do you think we'll have to raise it next year from what you see so far?
There's no way to.
There's no way to know. I mean,
have we made a big enough dent in that?
well, I think what we budgeted, we were sort of talking about this at the finance committee. We budgeted what,
154,000.
154,000 as part of the activity fees and physical fees and stuff like that for the year, and we're at 70. So, will we hit 150 come June? It's a good question. We won't know. Hopefully.
But the one thing it allowed us to do it didn't come with, wasn't the most popular decision, but it allowed us to keep our extracurricular programs.
And just so you know, the dues, each club, the advisor sets the dues. That's not even decided like at the high school level that they're going to say every club is $10. That's depending on the advisor and the activities that club is doing. Example, Honor Society is a $25 due. DBYEA used to be 10, so the advisor determines what the dues are, and they vary depending on the club.
Right, yeah, I see that.
And it's their general operating budget for that club.
And didn't Mr. McElmoyle tell us they try to leave a surplus in the student account from one year to the next? So
they have operating.
I.e. at the end of the year, they don't want the students of this particular year running that balance all the way down to zero, so that the students for the following year don't have any money to start with. So they always try to not only cover their costs, but always leave some working capital available for the next year for students to be able to do whatever it is they do in the clubs.
Okay.
Okay. Was that all the questions?
Well, not exactly, but I've probably spent like 3 minutes.
If you want to email me the other ones, we can try to get those, or email them to Dr. Otto, we can try to get those answered for you.
Before you get off finance, I'm sorry, anybody else? Thanks. Getting back to, I'm sorry, this free and reduced lunch thing. Do we have the right to audit everybody?
Yeah, I think she said that.
I'm sorry, I missed that. If you did, I apologize.
I said if
we so desire, do we have that right?
Everyone?
Yes.
I know I guess.
Okay, that's all.
We can check.
Okay.
I know if we see something
In other
that
words,
we
it's not
find
prohibited.
funny, then we can
Okay,
ask them to
again,
show proof. So that would tell
The reason
me.
why we don't say, here's your application, here's the 2 paycheck stubs been submitted, I mean, everything else you do, you buy a house, you buy a car, they're always asking for verification of income.
We get those applications and those directions right from the USDA through
Okay, but can we,
PDE.
I guess
I'll
this
have to
question
check for
is,
you.
can we say, submit the application and I want verification?
Not on the application instructions, no, because that's standard from the state.
But can we do that? Like, can we have a copy of your last year's W-2?
I would check with Mr. Zubers on that.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
With the
Okay.
I would think you'd
confidentiality
be
and
better off
everything.
doing it for everybody than picking and choosing.
Again, I'm not,
Because then you
maybe,
get into
again.
why-
The question is, can we exceed what the government
Can we exceed what
expects?
the state, the federal government's asking? That's my own.
That's a question for
That's my
Yeah.
question.
We can research that.
legal.
Okay.
It's a retainer.
Yeah, that's what I would ask. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions pertaining to finance? All right, personnel.
I want to draw your attention just to a few items here and then take any questions if there are any. The first one is under appointment C1C, where it says the issuing of permanent teacher contracts. I'd just like to make a point of this when we have this. This is what's called, you see such a lengthy list there, and the reason that is happening, it says issuing of permanent teacher contracts. I think that's kind of a misnomer. What it means is these teachers are being tenured. So if you're familiar with that process, it's the law. They've done their requirements. They've gone through and just for the benefit of tenure doesn't mean, which you hear sometimes in the public, that these teachers have permanent jobs and can't be fired. There's nothing further from the truth. All tenure means is you have due process protection before dismissal. That's all it means. So in the state of Pennsylvania, when you're tenured, you have a little bit more due process. That's all it means. So these people have satisfied just a quick run through tenure. They've satisfied 3 years of satisfactory teaching experience and have been rated satisfactory in the last 4 months of that 3-year period. And that's what the qualifications are to receive tenure. So that's what
that's the state.
That's Pennsylvania tenure law. Yes.
Okay.
So for a portion of that 3 years, they could be barely getting by because they straightened it out in the last 4 months and get satisfactory reviews. Not saying that they'd still be around if you were there.
Correct. Technically speaking, that would be a correct statement.
What, 3 years?
But the caveat to that, Mr. Shaheen, is if in that last stretch they are rated unsatisfactory, they're not granted tenure.
You could be great for 2.5 years and then...
Right, and then if you're not, then we can put you on an improvement plan and extend that period until which you are satisfactory again to grant tenure.
If you're out for an extended period of time, does times don't count? Injuries?
Probably.
Yes. If you're still under contract with the district and you haven't had any issues with the disciplinary evaluations. Okay, I also would like to draw your attention to transfers D1, A, and B. The new position is due to a special ed situation and an IEP decision, and that led to the recall of the individual in item B. So that's it under Personnel, are there any questions?
So A is replacing B?
Anne Marie?
B is replaced.
B is
I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Sorry.
A is being moved from a 3-hour
yeah, right.
back to a full-time.
And where did
Gotcha.
we find those funds? Desk drawer, file cabinet?
I don't know, it's special ed.
Is that
It's a new
access?
student that has moved into the district.
Access.
We,
Access, I'm assuming.
we can,
First year.
we can, I don't know if we've designated that yet, but we don't have any choice but to get the position. We can find out where we can code it.
Well, let's not let it slip, though.
Yeah.
I would prefer it to be in the minutes if you want it one way or another.
Yeah.
So
I'd
that
like to-
payroll has
yeah.
it clear.
Well, before we approve it, let me check with Shelley to make sure it's
Can
doable
you
to
add
access.
that next week, 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Where it's coming from?
right, yep.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Any comments from the public? Okay. On the programs.
You have your enrollment attached, nothing outstanding to report there. 2 out-of-state field trips which need approval by the board. And as you can see in the note, they're funded by the students. And under the high school club proposal, 2 issues to bring to your attention that I think we would like feedback from the board. At the high school, we have had a desire to have someone donate a $1,500 amount to help fund the TSA program at the high school level. As you know, this is not an approved club per se in the contract at this point.
It is at the middle school.
It is at the middle school, but it is not technically in the high school. In order to have a program like this run, my bottom line here is they wanted to offer the $1,500. I didn't want to see that money go away, so I'm trying to find a way to make it work. The way I think we can make it work is to kind of run it under the Adopt a Program kind of focus that we were looking at. I did talk to Mr. Subers about it because I did have a little bit of an issue with maybe potential subcontracting, and he said it would probably be good to have a conversation with the association about getting a memorandum of understanding to say this is just a 1-year shot at this point, and then we can take it up further to decide whether or
The
not we
gentleman
want to
bringing
make
this
it.
to you sent me an email yesterday, wanted to know if he could use my name, because my son went through this program as supporting it. And I said the board, and I replied to him simply telling him that the board will look at any program that is fully self-funded without an issue. But if the program needs to be funded by the district, we've got other things we need to use our funds on. And he replied telling me that the program is looking to be 100% self-funded, and no district money would be used to put the program in at the high school.
My feeling is I just hate to see turn away that money. I mean, we have somebody that's reaching out to us.
It's a great program.
Is this an activity during school hours or after school hours?
After school hours.
No, we already have a chapter at the middle school. It's
TSA.
approved. It's in the contract. TSA never made it to the high school level yet.
So they get out of the high school and they do great things. I mean, if you've ever been involved in it, they do all kinds of things. They'll build bridges and see how much weight it can take for the bridge collapses and photography and stuff. But it goes through the middle school and they get they've gone to states and nationals out of the very similar to Odyssey of the Mind type of thing. They got problems to solve. But once they get out of the middle school, it's dead. I mean, they don't have anywhere to continue on in those. And I was surprised to see the email yesterday, and I just simply said that if it's self-funded, the board will look at anything as long as it's able to stand on its own and it's not coming out of district money.
Well, how do they propose self-funding?
There was a donation.
No. But have we looked at what a stipend would cost if it's going to be
$1,291.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, to your question.
So then $1,500 would
cover the stipend. Yeah.
Okay, and that makes me wonder: did Rotary ever give us money for the Interact position? Because I know we were going to.
Oh, yeah, check in his hand.
We were going to remove those students that were participating in a self-funded club from that activity fee. And I know we said that we would get back to them at budget time, and they were more than willing. I think they were going to pay like up to $2,000.
Yep.
Did we ever?
No, where I thought it was left with that one was that we weren't going to waive when the board decided to run all of the clubs, that we decided that we weren't going to waive the fee for anybody because it would be too complicated.
I just think we were.
I thought
I
we
think
decided, and if we
yeah, I
pull
think-
our policy, I think it
the
says
policy
it in it.
says if it's fully funded, that
Yeah.
there's no
I
fee.
thought we discussed.
I'm almost
Yeah.
positive.
We
that's
never
what
got
And I think we were supposed to get back to them, we were supposed to get back to them and tell them how much.
Right.
That was on us. And I'm pretty sure that policy, because we had discussion on that.
Yeah, and we had extensive discussion.
Is that club like lacrosse?
Well,
In a sense.
lacrosse is that's totally self-funded, the Amity AC funds that. So they were also waived from paying the
But
fee.
I guess my question is the TSA like,
No, that she's bringing us, the way I remember it was is
I'm
that
gonna pull the policy.
if
We'll pull a
the,
policy and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
I
because
think
don't do anything.
before we get sidetracked on the Rotary Interact issue, let's just stay focused on the TSA for right now.
Well, the TSA, we would already have a precedent, so that's
Well,
why.
I
it's
guess what my
important.
concern is,
the difference in Interact and TSA is we already have a contract-approved stipend paid. In the DBEA contract, Interact is there, TSA is not, so they're not alike.
I know, but if you're going, why would you
But
not
don't we have a process? I
add
mean,
something that's
Well-
going to benefit the kids?
well, I guess my issue is that, and this came up when we were talking about this whole stipend issue to begin with, where years ago, none of these things were covered, there were no stipends for these things, and then one or two, teachers became these advisors for these activities, and then it comes up in a contract discussion, and now all of a sudden there's this blanket stipend for all activities in the school district that's costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I would prefer to see if we're going to bring any additional club or activity to the table, treat it like we've treated lacrosse. If it's self-funded and it's being run outside the district, then we can loan our facilities to that organization just like we do with lacrosse.
You can't do that with this because it
Why not?
has to be a school has to be a school authorized activity for
Right,
TSA.
they need the sanction of the school.
The adopt-
Don't we do that with lacrosse? They wear our jerseys, they get a varsity letter, they compete in PIAA
I guess you could.
stuff.
Same thing. whatever.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same
It seems
thing.
to me, isn't there a process where the principal of the school brings that and then has to be discussed?
Anne Marie-
with the-
Anne Marie and I
the
discussed
union?
this
It
at-
seems to me to add the position, I mean,
I would question whether a family would write a check to an individual as a stipend. We've used the formula from.
Look, but we're not handling it. So if it's not a school activity per se, in the sense that we're not funding it, like lacrosse, we don't pay anything for lacrosse. They use our fields. And
The only
and
connection though with
the
TSA
students
is we have
pay.
a district employee running that TSA. I think that's the plan.
But I think they're going
Okay,
to use her.
can I read the policy that we approved? And it's actually guidelines. And it says, students who participate in any sport, club, activity, or student organization that is self-funded through ticket sales or other revenue sources is exempted from an activity fee. And the list of those organizations will be forwarded for the board's consideration by the administration annually. So those Interact students would have all been exempted, and I know Rotary had come saying they would do the same. TSA, as long as we're going to be running it and we approve it annually, they would be exempted. If they're not going to be, if an annual donation of that $1,500, then we wouldn't approve it, and either they'd have to pay or you don't run the program.
Yeah, and I think it was going to be the same individual that does it at the middle school running it at the high school, correct?
Correct.
so
No,
could we,
have
as
a
a board,
different, we have a high school teacher.
Wait, now you
make
have
a motion
We
to
have
create
somebody.
that organization for 1 year, subject to the pending funding from this outside source?
I think we need to check with, because we're bound by the contract as to what the stipend would be, because you're going to have
Right,
to have
that was the
equitable
issue.
codes and stuff.
Right.
So I think we need to ask Brian so we don't get into labor issues.
And that's why
I
we're
don't
You
bringing
wanna
it
know,
up.
because if somebody else is
you have this
paying
whole
for it,
issue.
it doesn't
Right, I
mean,
think you have to talk to
unless
the
they're
union, sure.
volunteering.
Right, he wanted
You know,
me
we
to
can always
bring it up with the
volunteer.
union.
And you got this whole issue of past precedent,
Right.
and that always comes back and bites the school district in the rear
We
end.
don't even have a proposal in front of us. I thought he was going to be here to present the proposal. So until we actually get a proposal in front of us, we can't vote on it. And so if they want us to vote on this by the voting meeting, we need something in our hands soon.
Yeah, I'm coming to the meeting with a check.
Margaret, I did the salary on the units and the stipend that's in the contract so that there's certain units given to Tessa at the middle school.
is that just the salary? Is that benefits also?
Benefits also.
Yeah, but hold on a
To
second.
the percentage.
If this is not, I guess it depends on how we're going to handle it. So this gets back to my question. If we're going to handle this like the lacrosse club, then it doesn't make a difference to us what people donate and what kind of deal they strike with whoever the advisor or the coach or
Right.
whatever the case may be. They could pay them $5,000 a year to run run it. It's not coming through the school
The only thing with
district.
lacrosse is we approve the actual coach that
As a volunteer.
as a volunteer.
We could approve a teacher as a volunteer
Right.
advisor.
And that's for liability
Whether it's a club
issues. And,
sport or an academics club, it's still a club, so
Right.
that we're not funding, so.
Yeah, I mean, if we get to approve them as a volunteer, I got no problem with that. But I don't know why we get involved in how much they're giving versus what it costs. Let those
I don't think we're
parties
getting
work it
involved in how
out.
much they're giving. I think it's just, I think they were thinking that would be enough to cover a stipend, not really knowing what they would be giving would cover.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where the confusion
Well, that's
is.
between, at this point, it's between them and the high school teacher that we run the program, because we're just going to approve, A, the high school teacher, and B, whether or not we want to put our name on that activity. Beyond that, it's between the people funding it and the teacher.
Now, Treat Interact and all these other ones the same way. They're self-funded. I don't think the
but
school district...
Interact's an approved club with a set stipend, so
Oh, right. So that's in a different category.
that's bound
That
in
would
the
be like
contract.
the yearbook.
Right. Everything that's in that appendix.
Gotcha.
But I know when we had that discussion, I think they said that they would pay up to $2,000.
I
And
think they said
it was like
$2,000.
$1,300 the stipend was, because I know we looked at that, and I was under the impression that
Well, I'll
somebody would get in
follow
touch
up
with
with- I'll follow up
District
with them.
Justice Glass, and
I'll follow up with
it's
them.
guideline 114.
And if that's what the policy says, we may be in the position to refund a couple kids their activity fee.
But it's an all-inclusive fee, so you're probably...
There might be some that though, or that might be the only
not
club
that
they're
many,
in.
but there might be.
Yeah.
Now, the second half of this, so that the direction here, I mean,
You understand the direction then, right? You're going to talk to Subers about whether
yeah,
we can
I've already had
implement-
that conversation with him.
Well, that we can implement this TSA the same way we've implemented the club lacrosse, in the sense that it'd be a volunteer that we approve as a board, but otherwise the district really has nothing to do with it. They can use our facilities.
And he
or
was
whatever,
the only concern he had again was that I brought up to him. I said, "Is there a subcontracting issue here?" And he said he would be more comfortable if we did that with a memorandum of understanding with DVEA.
Okay. And then separate from that is this issue with Interact. You're going to take a look into that and make sure that
Well, no, I'll just follow up. Yes,
follow up with the
I
donation.
misunderstood the
and
policy
then,
there. That's my fault.
If we can get the donation, then those kids will get refunded whatever their activity
Right.
fee is, if that's the only activity they're participating in.
Now, there's a secondary issue here. We also have an offer, and Anne Marie will help me here, of a donation to help fund a club that is a board-approved club, and that's the Leo Club,
That's the Lions. Right.
through the Lions.
Right.
This issue is a little bit different. Again, if they would get, if we would, this club though wasn't running
It is not running currently.
because of low enrollment.
Low enrollment over the last couple of years.
So this is really the same, kind of the same conversation. So if we can go ahead and proceed with that under the same,
As
they're approved.
Interact.
Did they want to have a representative from their club part of those meetings too? Is that part of that too? With the
They
Leo?
can, yes.
Because
There's been
I'm
clubs
thinking
over
that
the
was
years.
part of that discussion
Right.
that they were talking about.
There is a high school individual again who has approached Mr. McElmoyle that he would be willing to be the advisor.
So we'll treat this one the same way as we're treating Interact.
Well,
You're looking about
Yeah.
almost $900.
because that's already a contract. That's-
Correct. It's already
It's
built
in
in.
the contract.
Yeah,
It's just not filled at the present.
right.
Okay.
That's it under programs.
Any other questions from board members on these issues?
Is there going to be a minimum enrollment for that club?
Well, if it's self-funded, it doesn't matter.
No, part of the reason that we had the self-funding feature was that it would allow a club not to be cut.
Lions Club would be paying for it, so it doesn't matter if it's
Well,
five
it can't
kids.
be a wait, you don't want to throw money away.
But we're not throwing it away. I mean, if the Leo Club gets 6 members and the Lions
Doesn't
Club say
matter.
that's
Right.
worthwhile, then it's worthwhile.
They're looking to generate
Yeah,
future.
they're,
Right.
I
They
mean,
want to keep the club intact.
They want to try to get it going again. We've got to start somewhere.
Right.
Okay, any other board questions? Any questions or public comment on policy or programs?
I was just curious, we already have the community foundation set up for donation, and there's a form that we have already on the internet. why aren't we using this organization when people want to donate to us? Can't we put it into here as a holding so that we get their money, hold on to it, then use it for something?
We don't want that money to come from us if it's for...
Foundation's a separate entity.
Mrs. Hamill, the foundation is really not, it's not a district organization. It is a coexisting organization.
Okay.
Well,
it says, it gives you the frequently asked questions on there. How can I support foundation? It talks about how it goes to Daniel Boone Community Foundation.
You have to address that with the
It's a
foundation.
nonprofit.
Yeah, it could be called XYZ Foundation. I mean, the board does have a relationship in the sense that one board member and the superintendent sit as ad hoc advisory members of the board, but it's a separate legal entity with their own board, and they meet at their own times and do their own thing. I mean, we haven't. I mean, Mr. Cassette used to sit on the board for that. I was nominated to do it back in December. We haven't had one meeting. I haven't received one email from the foundation in the last 10 months. So I don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you.
I was just looking at it today, and I thought, why aren't we, people are willing to give us donations?
It's a good question.
Well,
Excellent question.
Unfortunately, we discuss this ad nauseum at every revenue enhancement committee meeting because we'd like to be able to funnel people to the foundation, but
They'll be here. They've been invited for Wednesday night's revenue enhancement.
an organization.
An epic fail.
The way the bylaws of the foundation are structured,
My kids
as
use that
Dr. Otto
language.
said, it's coexisting
You
with
tell your
us,
kids
but we as a board and a district cannot ask them for requests. They should be fundraising on their own and coming to us saying, what do you need? What's your wish list? But that hasn't evolved.
Okay. Because I was just like, well, there's a donation form right there if they want to donate.
Right. Well, we've tried to get started, but it's
Well, we
died.
discussed the donors, and we've been working on a form for district donations as well at revenue enhancement. We just really don't have somebody at this point to spearhead that. And like I said, we meet on Wednesday, right? Mm-hmm. We're happy for any suggestions if you have any ideas of people who might be willing to spearhead that. But we talk about that pretty regularly.
Yep. Every second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday for 6 months at least now.
Yep.
Maybe you can contact them and ask them, the president.
He'll be here Wednesday night at our revenue enhancement.
Really?
You
Wow. You might get somewhere.
personal invitation.
Okay, moving on to policies.
Under Section 11, edits in items A through D have been made in the second readings. So before I go on to the others, are there any questions about the edits? Hearing none. Moving on. In items E, F, and G, Mrs. Trainer asked if she could bring forward a revision in that policy, and I'm going to turn to her and let her explain that briefly, but it really has to do with a process issue in terms of shortening or lengthening the leave. There appears to be a little bit of a breakdown, and I'll let her fill in the details.
For years and years, the policies, the way they were written, just seemed to work, and all the communication worked with employees who had been out recently, and I guess it's a sign of the economy in many cases. We had 2 individuals who came back prior to the leave that they had originally had approved here at board level by informing principal that they were returning, and they did not send a follow-up letter to Dr. Otto for formal board approval of a revision to their date. And so now it stipulates that specifically either to extend or to shorten their leave has to have prior board approval. So
That's what E, F, and G are about.
Clean them up.
It's only fair to whoever's.
Right. So that's a first reading. That should be kind of perfunctory, but if you have any further questions.
Are these current policies that you're just making a revision?
Yes.
They've been around for
Yes,
a
they've been.
It's just that one paragraph
Well, I
that
was
I
just asking because I didn't see the numbers on in the policies on the website. So are all the policies on the website on the board documents?
They should be.
Well, these numbers aren't there that I found. So
Okay, we'll make sure, we'll follow up with that.
So I didn't know if they were new.
You're talking about E, F, and G?
Yes, the
Okay.
320, 422, and 517. I didn't see on there. So
on board attachments or out on the actual policy on the website.
no. Under actual, like if you go under the school board policies and guidelines, I didn't see that.
320's not there. No, it isn't. 320's not there. When we were scanning.
That's what, that's the, I mean,
Mr. Campbell will have to.
I don't really, it's not a big deal. I just didn't know if they were newer. That's why
Well,
I'm
it
saying.
is a big deal for referencing a policy that doesn't
Well,
exist
okay,
online for
sure.
others to look at.
422 is.
Okay.
It is in the handbook, so that might be one that was missed back when they scanned them, because Mrs. Barr found it for me when I was looking for the three of them.
So it exists,
And
just not
517.
not electronically.
We are trying to keep
Correct. No,
them all.
I understand. It just doesn't exist electronically
Yeah,
yet.
320's the only one not there. The others are. At least in BlazerNet.
Well, and we
I
may
know,
want
I'm
to just
coming
make
through the
sure,
DB.
somebody may want to go through the policy that's online to make sure that everything's there, that's supposed to be there.
And I know it sounds mind-boggling, but as part of the board orientation, you have to do the policy, get those new books together, as opposed to getting the new books together, just make sure it's all online right.
Correct.
It's going to be time-saving in the long run because you're going to be having to spend the time in the next month anyway.
Well, look, and we're going to be referencing the online document from here until eternity. We might as well have the right one on there. Okay.
I got mine tonight if you want it.
Any other
Go online.
I got mine.
any other board comment on policies?
No. We have H.
Yeah,
Policy H.
We still
Okay.
I
have
have a question on H, Dr. Otto.
Well, let me just present the overview if I can. The Transportation Committee had asked, and we had had a subsequent meeting with our bus contractors. Mrs. Penza was part of that meeting along with me, and I tried to put some language in that was reflective of what we were trying to do relative to, I think the transportation contractors were feeling that they would at least like a chance for a limited number of trips that use some of the larger coach buses. And there was a concern that maybe some of the contractors that we were using didn't meet certain safety specifications. So subsequent to that, we had a meeting, and the contractors shared with Mrs. Penza and I, or with Mrs. Penza and me, a copy of the U.S. Department of Transportation's online safety management system. And that would be the document that we would use that kind of rates these bus companies. In reviewing those documents, the only thing that I want to say, and it gives me a little bit of pause for what's, even though we have this policy in place, and it may go through some revisions after we start talking, is that all of the bus companies, regardless of what it says on those forms, at least the ones that we would have used, are all rated satisfactory.
That's good to know.
So I just want to make it clear that for us to dig deeper than satisfactory is something that we can't even, I don't really want to be the transportation expert responsible for that.
Not asking you to, but the Transportation Committee came with a recommendation that a specific numeric value be put into our policy. And if specifically, Mr. Potts, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the number was 10.
What's a satisfactory range? Like
It's
like 6 to 15, or
I don't know. I just know that we looked at, and when we sat with the contractors, and when
Above 10.
they looked at above 10 is the top end of satisfactory.
There was a scale. There was a number that I'm sorry, Mr. Shea. Anything above it, that is good, and below that, it's questionable. He is right. I'm sorry.
Do you remember anything about
I mean,
10?
I'm not questioning them, but do we have this by an unbiased
Yeah, it's on the
person?
website.
We looked at ourselves. We looked at ourselves.
It's on the U.S. Department of Transportation
So we
website.
There's a document that we can reference.
There
I
is a
just-
thing on there, but there is a magic, on their website, a number
We
that.
don't want the word satisfactory. We want a numeric value. We requested a
like an
numeric
arrow.
value of 10.
At like a
Based on that scale.
10 or above.
Yeah, 10 or
Scale.
Yeah. They rate it.
You have to define satisfactory,
Correct.
I guess, is what you're looking for?
Exactly. Well, I think it's.
Do you have the website by any chance?
No, I have the documents.
It's
I have the
actually referenced in
website.
the document.
I have it. He gave us all the documents.
Referenced in the policy.
I just had on page 4 and page 5, we have a paragraph.
Yes, we know about that. It's a typo. Yeah,
Right.
we got that. We'll fix that.
And that's the paragraph that would likely change.
Right.
Right.
Your language.
No, we'll take that back and take a look at it. That's it under transportation, or under policy. And transportation.
Actually, we have transportation. Transportation Subcommittee is a temporary committee, and once this gets approved, we need to dissolve that committee. It's been actually for 3 years now, 2 years now. I think it's time to dissolve it at the next.
Finish negotiating that contract?
Yeah, we're done.
Well, I think at this point, too, I mean, we could probably dissolve it anyways.
We have to officially do that.
So you want to put in the minutes to
High Point?
Do you want to do that in October or November?
High Point's not done?
I don't have anything.
I thought we handled that. I thought we took care.
The High Point contract is supposed to go arm in arm with the contract that we have.
Yeah.
They're still billing me at like a rate I don't even know. I mean, it's old.
Okay, so what's
What? All right.
It's not. I just don't. I want to. I want to know for going forward. I mean,
It sounds that way.
I did it twice, but I thought it was
What's the
done.
High Point issue?
We have a separate contract
I've
for
seen nothing.
transportation services to High Point Academy, and I think I know we had addressed it at least twice.
They provide their own busing and then bill us for that busing at the rate that is supposed to be commensurate with the current contract.
Correct.
Do we have that in the addendum? Do we have anything in writing on that?
The contract
States that.
Yeah, and the contract was, the original contract with the High Point thing, I think it was still current, was done by the chairman of the Transportation Committee a couple of years ago, and it was sort of unknown by everybody else. We had to go back and figure out what was going on there and then bring that current with the current transportation contract.
It is now current and signed, or you still have questions? Maybe you need to...
It's not, again, the contract has no endpoint, Mrs. Casati. It just says that...
It's just tied to whatever...
Right, but apparently they're not asking for what their current amount should be.
Are they asking for less?
They're paying us less.
We're paying less.
them
We're paying them less.
Right.
We've been paying them the same amount, I think, for 3 years now.
They're providing the transportation, so we have to reimburse them for it.
I have I will make that contact again as the chair and try to...
Just let me know what I need to
Yeah.
Pretty good to have it as
There's
a
no
term.
ending, so
Okay, so moving off of policy, any other board comments on policy?
Well, he was bringing that up under transportation.
I know, but we didn't quite get public comment. Any public comment on policy?
Connor Kurtz, 709 Ridge Drive, Douglasville. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to comment on 11D, which is everybody's favorite policy, the teleconferencing policy. I'll try to keep it short. I would just like to make this request, I guess you could say. I believe it would be courteous for this board to wait to look at this policy until the new board is seated, considering this policy will affect future boards, not necessarily this board. I believe that the future board should have a say in this policy. I'm sure that elicits different emotions with different people, but I'll just leave it at that. I think it would be nice if this were to wait until the new board is seated, because it will affect the new board. And following members, it will not really affect this board. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, transportation. We talked about the High Point contract. Is there anything else? Okay, old business. New business.
I just put on an item which I had alluded to in a previous board update, just regarding trying to standardize a little bit the monthly meeting schedule for the committee meetings. I think we're close to that, but I just wanted to have some discussion to try to nail down, for the benefit of board members, who I know your schedules are all busy and ours as well, to make sure that we have administrative representation at the committee meetings. It's really a simple matter. Just, we had kind of had and I put it in that board update, we've kind of established the first Thursday as the curriculum committee, the second Wednesday as the revenue enhancement, now finance on the
Committee of the whole.
Second Monday, technically, before the board meeting, and I think the only other committee is the facilities, which is the first Monday. So if that's where we're going to go, that's fine. I think it might be a good practice to try to populate calendars with that now and get that done at least maybe 3 months in advance so that we all know.
Not only lasts until we select new committee members.
Until January.
I just want to put that out there. It helps. I'm as concerned about us administratively because I don't want any of us to not be able to attend these meetings, and it helps to be able to put them on the calendar in as far advance as possible. And I know you've all run into snags with your schedules too. So that's the only reason I put it out there.
You can almost leave these dates, and I mean, I know you can select new committees, new chairman, and the dates can still stay where they are.
That's fine.
Boards every 2 years, and we still do the second and fourth Monday of every month. So it just makes it much easier to plan moving forward on a lot of these.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a formal motion or anything. I just think it's kind of a practice for going forward, for planning, really. It's a planning issue.
It's common courtesy, too, though, so that people can plan and make themselves available or request that a meeting be moved. Let's say somebody has to be out of town or something, they could request a committee. Would you please consider? But I know for me, with my work schedule and everything, I always like to know so I could plan it out. And if I knew I was going to be out, then I'd bring it up with the committee. But it should be part of the reorganization when those committees reorganize, because depending on the makeup of the committee, Monday nights might not work for whoever's on that committee. It's different with the committee of the whole and the voting meeting, but your standing committees and ad hoc need to really be the majority of the committee that can make it.
And just the other issue in times of tight budgets, having to schedule and reschedule causes us another advertising cost, so we would like to stay away from that to the extent possible. So.
And actually, as a footnote to that, I've sort of been talking to the different committees that I've been participating with to see if we couldn't populate a 12-month calendar of items that committees should be discussing ahead of time. So that because there's going to be a transfer of knowledge here in the next couple of months, it certainly helps future committees and new members to those committees to understand what it is those committees do and the things that they need to be discussing on an annual basis. So to the degree that those current committees could start thinking about those items of stuff that they need to be doing on an annual basis and kind of populate a 12-month agenda, I think that would be very helpful to new committee members that are stepping on, particularly new committee chairman who will be running that committee for the first time, to know that they may need to be discussing a particular budget item, in February ahead of a March deadline or something to that effect, or facilities needs to be talking about something with the stadium in March so that it's ready for a decision by the board in April or whatever the case may be.
Curriculum Instruction Committee is not a standing committee also.
Right.
And it's probably we'll probably discuss that next meeting, that whether we bring we'll probably bring that as a recommendation, make it a standing committee.
I think that's a good idea.
With 2 readings, you're talking January, probably February before we get 2 readings before you make a new board president or the board president makes those recommendations. So
it'd be great if we can get it done by January.
You can't get it 2 readings.
December.
If you have December and January. But at least if you have the first reading in December, you'd know that probability is it would be approved as a standing committee, and you can have people assigned to it after you approve the policy.
Could we direct
in November
administration to draft that
for now, for November?
To start with it?
I mean, if that's going to be your recommendation.
Yeah, it's going to be a recommendation. I mean, we got.
I think we could have
it's a unanimous now. So if you can change that policy. We have to change the policy.
The board committee
November,
policy.
December.
I forget which number.
And then in January you could assign to that committee.
Yeah. I'll write that down.
So that's a policy change, adding it as the 4th standing committee.
That's all I have under.
I have one other item under new business. As a board, we received an informal invitation from the teachers to participate in the trick-or-treat night, which would be October 19th, which would be next Wednesday evening. I know several of us participated in that last year. I know Margaret was a beautiful witch, and I think you were...
Thank you,
in public, no less.
I was I was anywhere from a guy riding a chicken to a guy riding a turkey to the crazy hot dog vendor, but I was really just a cowboy on an ostrich.
Yeah, it was ostrich, right? It was an ostrich. So
I missed all that.
It really was a lot of fun last year, and I think we should volunteer to participate in this again. It was really a great experience for those who participated. I know I would certainly enjoy doing that again this year.
Yeah,
I would, but it's next Wednesday, you said.
It's next Wednesday at 6 o'clock.
Cannot, but it was a good time.
We don't have revenue enhancement, that's this
do any
Wednesday.
board members have an objection to the board having a presence there?
No, I think the board, I don't have an objection.
I don't think it requires a vote.
No, but,
Not as volunteer.
and we won't have badges.
Yeah, we won't have that.
Come dressed as a board
And
member.
I believe that we as individual board members brought our own candy.
Yes, we did.
I'll be there.
You can come dressed as a board member.
Bring a bag or two of candy.
So the event starts at 6 o'clock. It's at...
We usually set up at 5:30. Mrs. Hartzell's bringing decorations. And it's at the high
Is
school, and
it
we'll
the
find
annex?
out where
It's the
we're
annex.
at, what hallway, or if we're in the cafeteria when we get there.
Yeah, so we should get there 5:30
No later than 5:30.
to set up. And one of the things I recall distinctly last year is we needed to have brought a table and those kinds of things. So those
Well, I
of
know
us who
Mr. Gross said that he would have a table, but I'll throw one in the back
I'm
of my
thinking I
car
will too.
just in case.
Yeah, 'cause-
So I'm not running home for it at the last minute.
So we can decorate our area any way we wish to and so forth. So we should think about those and what to. Last year we had a fog machine that was which was a lot of fun for the kids. So
And it's scary music,
we
too.
did scary music. I think I brought the scary
You
music.
had brought the music. You
Someone
brought
brought
the
a
fog.
hand that came out of a bowl.
I brought that.
Do you have a theme in mind, Mr. Ross?
Scary. I think scary. No.
Oh, that's original. Scary.
But remember, you're
Very
dealing with
original.
little kids, so you don't want to scare
I
them.
just want to know if we're going for a theme.
I mean,
Come as the IRS.
I don't want to come and be the only one out in left field somewhere, you know?
I don't think we should be too scary for their little kids, but it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Mostly kids are under 8. So use your judgment.
Pick that up. That's true.
It's a little one.
But it's something that we haven't talked too much about.
But it's only next Wednesday. So those who are interested, let's just talk for 2 minutes afterwards and schedule that.
Okay. Anything else under new business? A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We have an executive session. Discuss personnel.
What's the website, Kevin? I wrote
U.S.
down.
Department of Transportation. Go on the left
Safety
side. Just go on the left side and go look up.
Hi, Mr.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great.